Good afternoon. Thank you so much for coming. Let me know if you can't hear me very well or you might find I'm too loud. And before I proceed, I will give you a very short outline of what I'm going to be talking about. I will give you a bird's eye view of the Social Security programs, how they relate with work activity, whether it's self-employment or employment. I am very well aware that in practice things are different than they are in theory. So we are talking here about theory and the law as it's given. And I realize that you may have encountered different experiences and you may have different stories. And if you would like to share a story or if you have a question, please let me know, contact DLC, and I will be more than happy to explain to you something as it is related to your specific area. For everybody else, in general terms, hopefully by the time I'm done, you will be able to answer several questions. And if I can go to the next slide. There are two programs that we're going to be talking about, SSI and SSDI. And if you can answer these three questions by the end of my presentation, that will make me very happy. So how does work affect SSI and SSDI benefits? If a recipient loses SSI and SSDI because of work, what are the choices? What are the chances as far as Medicare is concerned, Medicaid? Is it possible to be back in the program? And what can recipients do to avoid problems when they are trying to work part-time, full-time, in and out of work, and receiving benefits of some sort? So we will start with SSI, Supplementary Security Program. This is a program that not that many people know about. Social Security administers this program somewhere around 70s. It's been implemented since the 70s, and the idea behind the program was that it's a needs-based program, which means they have to know about your finances, sometimes too much. They need to know what your wages are, employment, self-employment, and how much money you have in so-called resources. This is Social Security lingo speaking. So SSI Social Security Administration will consider countable monthly income to determine whether you are SSI eligible initially, and then to determine how much money you may be able to receive on a monthly basis. If you started with a certain level in SSI, it does not mean that you will stay with the same level of cash benefits in SSI. Depending on how your other income fluctuates, you may go up or down up to a certain ceiling. The ceilings, so to speak, financial for SSI are in your packet. We gave you a handout with a little table that says, it lists different income levels for SSI in Massachusetts. So if you go to one of the pages there, you will see three tables on the very first page that will tell you that there are living arrangement A, B, and C. You don't need to know in great detail what the living arrangements are right now, but this will give you an idea that depending on your family situation, your earned or unearned income, and some other circumstances, you may get a different amount in SSI than somebody else you know. The maximum amount that a disabled individual living alone in Massachusetts currently, the maximum amount a person may receive is $788.39. So this is the maximum that you can get. If you start earning any kind of income, or if you have unearned income, which is inheritance, lottery, you get lucky, potentially you will get less than this amount. So you cannot get more, but you can always get less. So for SSI recipients, the main work incentive is the earned income deduction. And when I speak of work incentives, this is a set of rules implemented by Social Security specifically for individuals who are currently eligible for SSI and either work part-time or full-time. Wages or self-employment income is favored by Social Security Administration. They do understand that it's a good thing to keep people employed, and they try to ease or wean them off of benefits slowly. So if you start working and it's wages we're talking about, Social Security will favor this income and will try to decrease your monthly SSI cash benefit slowly. So for employees, SSI considers gross monthly wages when paid. And there are two things to remember here. It's gross, everything before taxes. We've seen many cases, people calling us, trying to figure out why they're in trouble because they were thinking what Social Security is counting is after taxes. And it makes perfect sense. However, this is a program about theory, and they are counting your gross. So whenever you get a pay stub, look very carefully at all of the breakdown of the deductions that you have and what is the gross amount on the end of the line on your pay stubs. This is the amount that SSA will be considering. They will count approximately half of your wages to reduce your SSI monthly amount. And this is the easy way to remember about it. Whatever I'm earning, approximately half of my wages will be counted against my SSI. The actual formula is a little bit more complicated, and we'll go to it in a minute. So there's such a thing as unearned income, and that is unemployment benefits, inheritances, lottery winnings, workers' compensation, long-term disability benefits, you know, anything and everything that is not immediately something that you received as a compensation for providing services. So Social Security will give you $20 of unearned income deduction. So let's say if I receive in workers' compensation $300 per month, Social Security will allow me to deduct $20, and they will only take into consideration $280 per month as unearned income. To make it more easier to understand, let's do the example. Let's say Carmen, she receives $788.39, which is the maximum amount one can receive right now in Massachusetts. She takes a job. Let's say she takes a job of $885 gross per month. So what will happen to her SSI? Will she lose the benefit? So what Social Security will do, they will take $885 and they will deduct $65, which is earned income deduction, standard for everybody in all cases. Since she doesn't have any so-called unearned income, they will also deduct $20. So in the end, they will take $885 and deduct $85, and we're left with $400. Conveniently enough for us to, in terms of math. So you take $400 and then divide it by half, and only half will be counted against Carmen's SSI check. So what will happen is that original amount, $788.39, will be deducted by $400. So at the end of the day, she's left with $388.39 in her SSI check, plus her full amount of wages. So she is better off. And two things to take with you home after this example is that, yes, you're always better off working more, obviously, but you're almost always better off working even initially if you're receiving SSI, because at the end of the day, you will be slowly decreasing your SSI check and increasing your salary until you're completely outside the area when you can receive cash benefits. So it's a good thing, and people should be able to report everything to Social Security and stay on SSI, slowly weaning away their eligibility. Now, I will not go into an example where Carmen will have unearned income, because the only thing that will change, SSA will take her cash benefit amount, subtract the unearned income, and then whatever's left, if she still has earned income, they will subtract after that her earned income. So the easy way for you to remember, what happens if you have unearned and earned income? Unearned income harms you, so to speak, more, because it will, Social Security will deduct dollar for dollar out of your SSI cash benefit any kind of eligibility for unearned income. So let's say if my SSI is $788, but I receive $700 of unearned income, my check will be decreased by $700, dollar for dollar. If this income is earned, my check will only be decreased in half. So that's what I meant when I said in the beginning that earned income is favored. For net self-employment income, Social Security takes into account any kind of business expense that you have. So it's not gross, but it's net income. And before you skip merrily to Social Security office saying, well, this is self-employment income for me, so you shouldn't be able to subtract gross but take net, please get in touch with Social Security office and explain to them the exact setup of what your situation is like, and make sure that they agree with you that whatever your working arrangement is, it is indeed a self-employment income, and they do not consider you to be an employee. Sometimes there are arguments. You may think you're self-employed, they may think you're employed, and the difference may be crucial, in fact. It will be a difference, maybe a slight in terms of cash, but it may make you ineligible for SSI completely. Another good work incentive is impairment-related work expense. And if you look through the materials, you probably will notice Social Security really likes alphabet soup. They like to throw out different acronyms for everything. So IRVs sounds really ugly. The easy way to remember what it means is essentially things you need to be able to work that you pay out of pocket. So any kind of expenses that are related to your medical condition that you need, but it's not covered by any other outside sources. You have to pay out of pocket. It's not covered by your health insurance or by anybody else. Those are the amounts that Social Security may consider to be IRVs, and they will help you to keep your SSI up, higher than it normally would have been if you didn't have any IRVs. Again, an important thing to remember, you may think that any particular item is an IRV. Social Security may disagree. It makes sense to let them know that, let's say, if you're spending $100 per month for out-of-pocket medication, that you think this is an IRV because this particular medication, I don't know, vitamin regimen, helps you to stay well enough to be able to work. Keep the receipts to prove how much money you spend on this. Bring it to Social Security office and make sure that you're on the same page with them, literally, that they understand this is an IRV, and going forward, there won't be any disagreement. So these are the examples of what type of things they will be looking for when they consider what is an IRV. Attendant care services provided at work or at home. Transportation costs required because of disability. If you just feel blue and don't feel like taking a tea in the morning and you took a cab, this is not an IRV. If you cannot take a tea for some kind of medical reason, a couple of clients I had were disoriented enough and they just were not able to figure out what is the stop that they need to get on and off. That is a reason related to a disability. They had to take a ride, or sometimes they had to take a cab when the ride wasn't available. That is an IRV. Durable medical equipment, work-assistive equipment, any kind of prosthesis can be considered IRVs. People with visual impairments, those who use service animals, most of the items that they have to buy for the service animal may be considered an IRV. People who use hearing aids, batteries, and other things, and these days the technology is changing literally every day and something new is on the market, and if you're using it and if your health insurance or some other source doesn't cover the entire cost, that potentially may be an IRV. Expendable medical supplies, medical devices, non-medical devices, pretty much anything and everything. Use your imagination as long as you have this conversation with Social Security early on. Bring the receipts, bring a short statement from a physician explaining why this particular item is somehow connected to your disability, and make sure that Social Security understood that this is an IRV. An ideal situation would be if you receive some kind of written statement from a person at the local Social Security office, in fact confirming that you came in, explained your situation, and from now on they consider that $300 per month that you're spending on food and other supplies for your dog is an IRV. So going forward, if you're earning $500, 300 of those will not be counted at all because you're spending it on the dog and everything that it needs. Blind work expenses. This is only applicable for people who are visually impaired. You do not need to necessarily receive benefits as a blind individual. Social Security has a different standard for people who meet the blindness standard. And if you receive benefits because you have a visual impairment, but it doesn't rise to the level where you consider to be quote-unquote blind recipient, as long as you need to deduct something that is connected to your visual disability, you can deduct it as a blind work expense. And it's a little bit wider, it's a little broader than other IRBs. And examples would be service animals, same thing, transportation, taxes, attendant care services, visual aids, translation materials for Braille, lunches, work lunches, obviously, professional association dues, anything and everything, as long as it's well documented. Most problems that people face in the future, going forward, would be documenting and proving that you reported this as an item which is either a blind expense or impairment-related work expense. People who are so-called students, again, as Social Security defines students, people under age 22 and regularly attending school, can deduct certain amount that they receive in addition to all the other deductions that I explained previously. Regularly attending school for SSI purposes means for young people at ages 7 and 12 attending at least 12 hours per week of school, for college or people who are in a vocational program attending at least 8 hours per week of school. So again, if you notice, there's a theme here going. Every single definition may not necessarily coincide with what you think the average, daily definition of what a student is and IRB is. So whenever you think I'm a student and I am entitled to this deduction, make sure that Social Security understands that you are attending school and you have certain income, and they should subtract that income from your SSI, and should not subtract that income from SSI because you're a student. I think it's a little bit unwise to not inform Social Security hoping that they will find out and they will understand your situation. You have to act proactively, and you have to inform Social Security about anything and everything that's going on around your life in terms of professional activity or education. So in 2011, the student earned income deduction is $1,640 per month up to a maximum of $6,600 per year. So if they agree that yes, you're a student and you're working at the same time, you will be able to make that much money, $1,640 per month, and none of it will be counted to decrease your SSI check. So as you can see, this is a very significant work incentive for those who would like to study and lucky enough to maintain the energy to work at the same time. Federal assistance, any kind of assistance under the Title IV of the Higher Education Act. This is a federal statute dealing with student loans. So any kind of assistance under the 1965 Act, under BIA student assistance programs, it's excluded from income and resources, most importantly resources, regardless of how you use it. So if you got an official disbursement from the Department of Education because you're a student, first of all, in the month when you receive this money, it's not counted as your income. You deposit it in the bank, you go forward spending it on educational and other expenses, it will not be counted as your resource. Why is that important? For SSI program, Social Security allows people to keep in resources $2,000 if they are living alone as a disabled individual, or $3,000 if we're talking about a married couple. So as you can see, it's a very small amount, and pretty much anything and everything is counted. Any kind of funds in savings accounts, in cash, anything that you can convert easily in cash potentially might affect your eligibility because it will put you over the resource limit. If you receive educational assistance, none of this money will be counted as a resource or as income. Now, if you're lucky enough and you have other ways to receive help for education from your family, from nonprofit organizations or anything else, to pay your tuition, fees, and other necessary education expenses, it will not be counted as income or resources. But there's a difference. If you get it from the federal government as a student loan, it's up to you how you spend it, whether it's directly related to educational purpose or in some other way. If you get it from another source, it has to be education related. You cannot turn around and spend it to buy a car or pay for your apartment or anything else like that. If you do that, there is a possibility that Social Security will disagree about the deduction, and they will look back and decide, you know, remember when you received that beautiful gift for school, but you spend it not on educational expenses, but on something else? Well, we count it as a resource now. So going back 1 year, we now think you're not eligible for SSI, so you owe us money. To avoid this very unpleasant situation, it's important that you know exactly where the money coming from for your educational expenses, and if it's not under those two statutes that I mentioned prior, you have to let Social Security know that's where it's coming from and this is how you spend it, that you spend it on educational expenses. Plan to achieve self-support. I'm not going to talk about it because Brian, a speaker who will follow me, will explain more what it is and how to arrange this. This is something that's available for people who receive SSI. Now, what happens with Mass Health, which is Medicaid in Massachusetts, or Medicare, if you start working? Again, I won't be spending a lot of time explaining any of this. There will be another speaker who will devote her entire presentation to this. You just need to realize that if you are receiving SSI, the first thing you need to think about how it will affect my monthly cash benefits. And the second piece, what will happen with my Medicaid or Medicare. In Massachusetts, people who receive SSI are automatically eligible for Mass Health Standard. It's a great program. For many people, this is a more important benefit than cash benefits because in terms of value of money, it's much higher. You get really, really nice health benefit with very wide coverage. So a lot of people are not afraid as much of losing the cash benefit, but they really are very hesitant to move forward thinking that I'm just going to lose my health care coverage. In Massachusetts, the good thing is that it's not likely to happen, or at least not right away. And if you go over a certain amount, if things go well and you have nice wages and you're not SSI cash eligible, you still can receive Mass Health as a working disabled individual. And call all your questions until the speaker who will come after me covers this material. I'm not going to talk about it in great detail. So how do you avoid problems if you're receiving SSI and you are already working or you're planning to work? And I have 3 words for you: report, report, report. I realize dealing with Social Security is not always a pleasant experience. However, it's impossible to avoid it if you want to avoid problems. If you move somewhere, if you get a new job, or if you switch jobs and you get more money, if you got any kind of income from anywhere else, if your family situation changed, you got married, you got divorced, you have more dependents, the dependents moved out, all of these things potentially may affect your SSI, either eligibility or cash benefit. To be safe, you need to report it. You need to write it down, bring it to Social Security office, or mail it with registered mail if you can help it. Keep the receipts that you will receive, the little green stamps signed by Social Security personnel, so that in the future, if there are questions about your eligibility, or if there are questions about how much money you are eligible for or were eligible for, you can prove that, at least as far as you are concerned, you complied with the rules and regulations and you reported everything that you had to report to Social Security. So if there's an overpayment, which means federal debt, you will be able to at least request a waiver, request Social Security to waive this debt and deal with it accordingly. If you do nothing, you may be up for some unpleasant surprises down the road. Social Security is an extremely large bureaucracy. They do not pick up on this sort of situations right away. So if you started working and if you do not report your work, they may not know that you're working. They probably will only find out about your work activity when they match the records they have with the IRS records. because most of the time, unless you're working under the table, you will be paying FICA taxes. And this is how Social Security will eventually find out that you're working. They will know it once a year, and it may be too late for you. If they found out something in December, but you started working in January, so the entire year you might potentially not have been eligible for SSI, or at least not for the full amount. And if you did nothing, and if you didn't report, the entire amount might be charged as an overpayment to you. To avoid this situation, you need to think proactively and report everything. Now, SSDI, this is a different program, and I wish I could say the rules are the same, so as long as you know what I just told you, you're good. But it's not. It's a completely different set of rules, because the reasoning behind the program is slightly different, and also because the Congress just thought that would be wise to have two different sets of rules for two different programs. So, Social Security Disability Insurance, it's an insurance program, so it works in some ways as a private insurance program. Throughout your lifetime, you pay FICA taxes, they go to a fund, and if you are disability insured, when the time comes and you meet the disability standard that Social Security has, you may be eligible to SSDI on a monthly basis, and some of your dependents may be eligible for that. Depending on how much FICA taxes you paid, your Social Security check will be different from somebody who paid less or more FICA taxes. That's why there are situations where people of the same age, relatively the same experience, may get a very different amount in SSDI. In SSI, this is all set standards, and you will all be many beneficiaries receive the same. For SSDI, it's tied to your work experience, so your SSDI check will be different. I'm not going to go into credits. Basically, for you to remember, in SSDI, as long as you pay FICA taxes and they credit your taxes, you are eligible for SSDI. That's why work under the table in some creative circumstances when you're not paying FICA taxes may hurt you down the road. It's extremely important that if you enter some untraditional arrangements, that you make sure that your employer, in fact, is paying his or her or its share of taxes and you paying FICA taxes, because going forward it's very unpleasant to find out that you're not eligible for disability benefits or maybe even for retirement benefits. Well, in 2010, the maximum amount in SSDI was $2,323. It's around $2,500 right now. It's not going to change drastically going forward for 2012. In your packet, we handed out you updated amounts for Social Security disability benefits. They change every year with the cost of living, COLA increases. For the last 2 years, there was no COLA increase because the economy was not in the best shape. Going forward in 2012, people will get a little bit more in SSDI, but not significantly more. So how does work affect benefits? And this cheesy photo here is just to give you an idea that this is a completely different world. If you're receiving both SSI and SSDI, you have to remember two sets of rules. If you just receive SSI, you have to abide by the rules I just listed prior. If you don't know what kind of benefit you receive, it's extremely important that you find out. Get in touch with your local Social Security office and see whether it's SSI or SSDI. So what you have there, this is sort of a timeline of what's happening. If you decided that you want to work and you receive SSDI, Social Security will allow you to work for 9 months, not necessarily consecutively, and they will call it a trial work period, which sort of makes sense because they understand you need to go and try and see whether you are able to work full-time or maybe part-time. Once you're done with it, within that trial work period, you can earn any amount of money and it will not affect your SSDI benefit. So sort of go for it. Try to go as high as you can, see if you can sustain this level of work activity, and your check is safe for 9 months, either consecutively or not consecutively. Once you're done with 9 months, you enter another period where they call it extended period of eligibility. This is 36 consecutive months. They run consecutively, and they run no matter what happens in your life. So let's say if in June was my last trial work period month, in July, the 36 months will start running no matter what I do with my life. I can work, I cannot work, it's just going to go on. So if you are within that 36 months period, you really have to keep attention to your earnings, how much money you earn, because if you earn over a certain threshold amount, you are not entitled to SSDI check. If you're earning under the threshold amount, you are. So you may be in a situation where your benefits will be going up and down, up and down. It's important to know that you are in this period because Social Security does not keep very good track of where people are, and they will just keep on paying you until 5 years down the road they realize that was all a mistake and now you owe $50,000. It happens. It's not a metaphor. I have seen these things happen. So if right now you receive SSDI and you're working, the best thing you can do for yourself is try and figure out where you are in this time chart. Are you still in the trial work period? Are you in the 36 extended period of eligibility? Or maybe you entered what we call the cliff. Once you're done with 36 months, you're not eligible for SSDI period, even if you're not working in that month at all. You have some choices as far as entering the program again, but at least initially, this is it. Okay. I'm not going to go through examples. I will just say on SGA, when I mentioned the threshold amount that you need to be aware of, this is $1,000 this year. It's going to be $1,010 next year. And what they mean by this is called substantial gainful activity. It's essentially an administrative convenience. Social Security thinks that if a person who has a disability gets wages or self-employment income of that amount, this is indicative of a situation where he or she is well enough and possibly doesn't meet the disability standard. So basically, if you're making that much money, it doesn't matter what's happening to you health-wise. You may stay exactly at the same level as before, but you won't be eligible for SSDI check. That's why for people who are visually impaired, it's 1,640. And it's counterintuitive. Nothing changed in terms of your visual acuity, or if you're blind, you're still blind, but if you're making $1,640 per month, potentially you may not be eligible for SSDI. This is what I mean when I say the threshold amount. And it's important to remember this once you're done with the trial work period. Earnings for SSDI are counted when they are earned and not when they are received. In SSI program, earnings are counted when they are received. And again, it seems like it's not a very important difference, but in SSI program, they will try to decrease your check depending on when you receive wages. And for SSDI program, it doesn't matter when you receive it, but when they credit to you, when you earn it. Again, gross earnings are counted, so it doesn't matter what kind of taxes are taken out unless it's self-employment income. What's important is that sick and vacation pay doesn't count. So if you have a nice arrangement with your employer and you have good benefits, and if you have sick and vacation pay, please pay attention when you receive your checks. Anything that you received as a sick or vacation pay should not affect your SSDI benefits. Social Security, when they match the records they have with IRS, will have no idea that a lot of the money, let's say, was sick or vacation pay. It's up to you to make sure that they know it and they do not decrease any amount, or they still send you the checks. Impairment-related work expenses, the one that we mentioned for SSI, still makes sense in this program as well. So you really need to keep track of the receipts as you spend money on impairment-related work expenses. If there are situations when Social Security has questions whether any particular item is an impairment-related work expense, your primary care physician, a nurse, medical professional who knows you well will be your best friend. All you need is a letter from this person saying that this particular item is important for you to be able to stay well enough and work.
I know that Svetlana can go on.
Well, actually, Jonathan, since Brian has generously contributed some time of his time to me, we go a little bit over.
A few more minutes.
Right. Now, one other concept that I think is important is unsuccessful work attempt. In some situations, Social Security will agree with you that You tried to work. You worked, let's say, for 3 months, and it didn't work out for you because you just couldn't do it because of your disability. This will not be counted in any way. It means you still will be eligible for SSDI as if nothing happened if they agree that this is unsuccessful work attempt. So a situation where you found a job, everything was great, but the stress was too much, the level of activity they demanded was too much, and you stopped work in about 3 to 6 months. You can bring all the information in, and again, you have to make sure that you're all on the same page, that Social Security agrees with you this was unsuccessful work attempt, and none of your checks will be affected. If you lost your job because you were fired, or because there was some other situation, this is not an unsuccessful work attempt. The reason that you lost your job has to be related to your disability. Getting back on SSDI, in a situation where you reach that proverbial cliff, but things didn't work out and you feel that you need to get benefits again, it's possible to get benefits in 2 ways. You can either apply all over again, file a new application, or you can file what Social Security is calling expedited review, expedited reinstatement. And I say they call it because in reality it's not very expedited. You file paperwork and in about 6 to 8 months you may be back in the program. But the good thing, if you file an expedited reinstatement, you will be eligible for provisional benefits for the period of 6 months while they're considering if you still meet the disability standard. To be able to file it for EXR, you need to show that you became disabled the second time around within the 5 years from the time your disability stopped, and that you have essentially the same disability. So again, easy way to remember this entire thing is that if you're not receiving benefits but you think you want to be back in the program, you need to make an appointment at your local office and have a very good and thorough conversation with the person there. What are your choices? Can you still file for EXR, or is it better for you to file a new application? For people who had disability, it stopped, they worked for a while, and then now they need to get on the benefits again. And if they had a very good job within that time frame and paid good FICA taxes, it's quite possible that they will be entitled to a higher SSDI amount. So in those situations, it may make sense for you to file a new application. If you didn't work, or you worked at pretty much the same level as before, probably it's better for you to file for EXR because you will be getting 9 months of provisional benefits right away. You don't have to wait. It's personal, it depends on the facts of the case, so that's why you need to have this conversation with the person at the local office. Now again, report to avoid unpleasant problems if you're receiving SSDI and working or planning to work. There are many people out there, well not many, but there are people out there who are available to help you. Brian, who will come after me and talk to you, is a benefits planner. They are free, they provide free confidential services for people who receive benefits. They are more than willing to meet with you and discuss your particular situation. If you have specific problem, or if you have a specific question, call Disability Law Center. I'd be happy to talk to you. My colleagues will be happy to talk to you about this situation. Unfortunately, this is something that already happened. This is a regulation that's in place, so the most we can do is ameliorate something that already happened. Social Security, about a month ago, issued a regulation about contacting people, that relates to people who contact Social Security personnel, whether it be district offices, hearing offices where the judges work, or any other office which is a Social Security office. Essentially, they had to address a situation as they perceive it. The situation is dangerous. Within the last couple of years, there's been an increase in the number of threats against the federal officials. And if you look at the statistics, it's not unfounded. It's not a case in Massachusetts, but in some other states, it's a sort of perfect storm. More people trying to search for help at the Social Security offices. The rules are more and more complicated. The agency is understaffed and not able to react well. So what you get, unsurprisingly, is a lot of very upset people in a very confined space, waiting for hours to get answers to some simple questions and not so simple questions. Some of them get very upset. Some of them get very dangerous. There are reports of people coming, having guns. There's a report in one of the southern states where a person rammed an automobile into the Social Security office. There are constant threats against the administrative law judges. So Social Security is not entirely unreasonable in raising a concern about it. What's unreasonable is the rule that they came up with. They basically now gave a very wide leeway to Social Security managers at the local offices to determine when somebody is potentially dangerous or dangerous. If this person will be determined to be as such, this person will be banned from interaction, personal interaction at any Social Security office in any of the 50 states. And this ban will last for 3 years. Social Security politely reminds people that they can still call them and use website, but we are completely aware that for many people this is just not an option. The concerning piece about this new rule is that the leeway is given to the district managers. There are no appeals rights. If somebody is determined to be dangerous, you have the right to ask for a review from another person in the district office, but this is it. You can't go to court, you can't go higher up. And there are no criteria that are clear as what is supposed to be dangerous and what is supposed to be a just critique of the practice, of the customer service practice. Social Security put this rule in place already, as I said, but they invited comments that are due on November 1st. If you feel that this is an important issue, you're more than welcome. In fact, we encourage you to get in touch with Social Security, or there's a way to do it online for those who can. If you go to regulations.gov and search for SSA, Social Security Administration Agency, the latest notices that they issued, they give you a way to post your comment online and submit a suggestion or at least some kind of a reaction. We propose that if you decide to do it and if you want to spend your time on this, you be more productive. Not just saying, I think it's a horrible idea, but actually trying to say, well, what would be a good compromise? Because we do realize that these people sometimes are in danger, but at the same time, you have people who have disabilities and need reasonable accommodations and sometimes may appear to be adversarial, but they're not dangerous and they should not be banned, at least not for 3 years from local interaction. So please, if you feel that regulations.gov and all this route is too convoluted, get in touch with us, Disability Law Center, and submit your comments, or if you have a story, or if you have a compelling case that might be brought to Social Security attention, please let us know. We'll be working throughout this weekend on this. November 1st is the last date on when you can submit comments. So that's pretty much all I had to say.